Hey guys, today we're going to talk about the M mode on our cameras, and that means full manual. Let's see what that's about.
Click, 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 click and a pick it. Click, 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 click and a pick it. Click, 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 click and a pick it. Click, click, click.
So the M mode on our camera is just a tool. You turn the dial till it hits the M, and then you can control all of the three priority modes: the shutter, the ISO, and the aperture. And so that's really all it is. It isn't like we're saving babies from a burning building. It isn't like we're deserving of a big ego, which many people that shoot in manual tend to think that they have this status, this image that makes them better than the rest, which is pretty foolish if you ask me. It's a tool, and in certain instances when we use that tool, we can get phenomenal results. But in other instances, we will lose shots, miss shots, and have poor shots if we're in full manual. So you have to use your discretion of where to use that. All right. So where the M mode really shines is when you're doing portraiture, when you're doing landscapes, when things are fixed, when the light values are fixed, where the scene is fixed, it's not moving, it's not changing, and there's not like a bunch of clouds coming in every 2 seconds. That's where manual really shines. When you can just fine-tune the adjustment. Maybe you're focused on a creek and you want a certain look for that creek, but all the other variables are kind of fixed. That's where M just rock and rolls. That's where you want full control. But one of the other things is you'll often see people, they take a shot and then they look at their screen, and they call it chimping when you're looking. And so they take a shot and they're like, oh, did it look good? Did it look good? Oh, did it look good? And they're looking at it every 5 seconds. And it's like, well, if that is the best choice for your photo, the settings that you've chosen, why are you looking at your screen every 2 seconds? You should have already decided, hey, if I know I took the shot, it's probably going to look in focus, it's probably going to have the right lighting. So is manual always the best setting if you're chimping every photo? Like, that makes you wonder, right? So my panties always get in a bunch when I talk about this M mode, and part of the reason for me was I started out shooting in fully automatic, and then I went to a semi-automatic, and then I went to a full manual. And when I went into full manual, I didn't really have an understanding of what I was doing, and it was so discouraging because 2/3 of my shots for street photography in a dynamic setting were not looking right. And I'm like, well, I've got the basics set up, but what I didn't realize is depending on how you focus on things, and if you're constantly moving, a tight focus could equate to a darker shot if you're focusing on somebody with dark colors, or it could equate to a brighter shot if you're focusing on something and the camera sees a lighter background. So it wasn't a good fit for street photography from what I found, unless you're just taking the onesies and the twosies and you're taking your time and you're looking there and you're like click, 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 chimping, click, 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 chimping, then you can do it. But if you're walking and moving, it's a terrible setting to use. I will often get 200 to 300 shots within a 2-hour period, and most of those shots are nice shots. They're usable shots. I couldn't do that in manual on the street doing street photography, unless I'm hitting the shutter on a high-speed shutter. Then maybe I could get something, but not in full manual. So consider the shot above your ego, whatever mode you're choosing. The shot is the most important thing. Get the shot. Take your ego and push it out the back door. Push it into your wazoo. It's not important. Get the shot. All right? Don't listen to all these other people where you see these memes on the internet that say, oh, if you're not shooting in manual mode, you're not a photographer. And that bothered me because at the time that I read that, I wasn't shooting in full manual. And I thought, well, okay, then I'll go take a class. And I took a class. And the class taught me that for what I was doing, semi-automatic made way more sense than manual mode ever meant for the style photography that I was shooting. And if you're willing to consider that a semi-automatic mode can benefit you more than a manual mode, then by all means use that. Don't let your ego control what your full potential could be, okay? And that's why I put this video up for the last video in this series for the DAL mode, because it created a lot of energy, passion, and angst in my own photography learning and growing. All right, so and let's get into that just a little bit deeper. All right, so let's dig into this. Let's give you the basic parameters of how to shoot in the M mode. So take your camera, set the dial to the M, and preferably choose auto white balance. Don't worry about setting the white balance to a manual mode yet. Just start out working on the first three things. You want aperture, shutter speed, and ISO. So choose the aperture you want. Do you want the background blown out? Then choose the low f-stop. If you want the background in focus, then choose a higher f-stop, preferably f5 and higher, okay? And then pick the shutter speed that you want. Now, shutter speed should be no less than 1 times the focal length of your lens. Some people choose 1.5 times the focal length. Some people choose a safe zone of 2 times the focal length. So say my focal length is 10, then it shouldn't be a lower shutter speed than 1/10. If it's 1.5 of that, choose a shutter speed of 1/15. If it's double, then choose a shutter speed of 1/20. Now, that is a general rule of thumb if you want things to be in focus. If you want them to be blurred out, choose a slower shutter speed, okay? Now, the last thing is your ISO. So the lower the ISO, the cleaner the shot, the less grain. So preferably, if you can get a shot in the 100 range, that's dynamite. But you might have to go all the way up to ISO 6400. That's usually the workable range, between 100 and 6400. Some cameras can push past that, but that's kind of the minimum standard for today's cameras. And then again, if you want grain, then put it up even higher. But people today tend to prefer a less grainy shot, so they want the lowest ISO possible. So start taking your shot. If it looks too dark, you can always change your f-stop number to let in more light, a smaller number. If it looks like it's not in focus, use a little bit faster shutter speed. And then you can balance your ISO till you get the exposure that you want. So there's many different ways to balance out those three, but when you move one adjustment, it usually affects the other two adjustments to some degree, okay? But that's why I start out saying pick the aperture that you want. Do you want it in focus or out of focus? That should be your first choice. And then try to balance the shutter speed to the ISO to get the desired look that you want. All right? And there are a few anomalies to that, and I'll go over that in the next part here, okay? So if those baseline thoughts still are kind of an unknown to you, take your camera, put it in fully automatic, take the shot, look at the readings. Does the picture look good? Does it look too bright? Does it look too light? Put it into manual. Then put those same settings into that camera and use that as your baseline. Now, one thing that really surprises me, especially with this new Sony, I have the A7R III, and when I take it out and I do night shots, it blows me away in fully automatic mode. Now, I've got a shot that I want to show you that I had taken at a local festival in the Philippines called the Buglasan Festival. Now, when I looked at that shot afterwards, I thought, wow, this shot really looks good. It was a handheld shot, and I just saw the scene, I held it really still, took the picture, and it seemed like it was a fairly slow shutter speed. And I looked at it later and I'm like, wow, the colors pop, everything looks really good. And what surprised me is, what f-stop number do you think that photo came in at? If you just look at the photo by itself, what f-stop would you guess? Most things are in focus. So if I were to guess, I would say it must be F5, F6 and higher to get as much in focus. But when I put that photo into my processing software and I looked at it, I'm like, it's F2. F2. How can that much be in focus at F2? And it's still boggling me how that came out the way it did. But that's it. That's the numbers. So, just know your camera, know your lenses. And shooting oftentimes in an automatic mode in a medium that you're unfamiliar with, like maybe you're shooting at night and you're not used to shooting at night, or you're shooting in full sunlight. Try that mode on your camera and see what it produces and see where your camera works within what ranges. I think that you can be surprised that you'll get shots with numbers that you're like, what? How did those numbers work out? And that might give you a tool to grow your own learning for your manual mode, okay? All right, so if those tips helped, consider throwing me a like. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe already, will you? And if you have subscribed, thank you so much. I really appreciate all your support and your help, all right? All right, so thank you very much, and let's grow together.